briefing this morning on Wednesday the 4th of February. This is a public briefing, and first up we have Selwyn Water Limited. So welcome Murray Strong, Chair, and Alex Grabera, the CE of Selwyn Water. We have been provided with a paper for information, but there is no presentation this morning. This is an update from Selwyn Water and a chance to ask questions, have a conversation. So I'll hand over to you guys.
Good morning, Mayor Lydia, thank you, and good morning, councillors. Nice to be with you again. I will take the paper as read that was incorporated in your meeting pack for today. Before I go further, however, I just wanted to acknowledge the death of Dame Dr. Karen Patasi, who was a director on Selwyn Water Limited. Her sudden and unexpected death was a shock, in particular, of course, to her 4 children and 10 grandchildren, but also to those of us who knew her particularly well. And she and I had been in a unique position where at various times in our careers we'd both been each other's bosses. To be one or the other means you learn a fair bit about a colleague, but to have been both provides you a rare one-off type of understanding and respect for the people that you work with, and it certainly builds collegiality, so I will miss her, and I know that my colleagues at Selwyn Water will as well. So look, I thought it would be useful to open with an acknowledgement of the importance that we see the relationship and partnership with council as. This extends beyond a traditional shareholder CCO relationship, and the way that we're undertaking working together jointly to go through the transition process for the establishment of Selwyn Water, and ultimately for it to become a fully fledged water entity on the 1st of July. Has been incredibly useful and beneficial. You've asked us as our shareholder to build trust and confidence through transparency and accountability, and these sorts of situations where we get to present to you in a public forum means that we're able to talk to you about what we're doing and how we're doing it. So some basic principles, I think, just to cover off for you. We're taking an intergenerational approach to this, and the responsibility that sits with us we take seriously. And everything that we are doing to prepare to be a billing entity on the 1st of July is driven towards that. As we go through the transition and change, we recognise that there will be opportunities that present themselves for us to do things differently, and we are sort of grabbing hold of those when they come, and the executive level cooperation in that space has been incredibly useful for us, and I think useful for you. One of the second foundations for us is fairness to the community, and making sure that as we hear more and more about equity, as we start to spend more time talking to the community, that we make sure we are having open conversations around making sure that there is a sensible and fair contribution from everybody who's accessing fresh and wastewater services, that costs are based on evidence, not assumptions, and they're based on sensible and considered approaches to capital investment over the long term. You've asked us to position Selwyn Water as a systems-led, not workaround-driven organisation. So the ability to reset the starting point for how we choose to operate in the capital development infrastructure space for water services is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Obviously, we are 100% owned by you as the shareholder and by our community. Privatisation is not an option, and we are at pains to continually talk about that with people that we engage with at a community board level, at various residents association meetings that we attend, and the like. But we are financially separated from council in order to make sure that we have accurate and sensible data upon which we can make informed investment decisions for fresh and wastewater services. Over the past 6 months, we've been focusing on delivering value as quickly as we can. We've been focusing on building that strong systems foundation in terms of data and integrity, and a capital program that will deliver the capacity that the community requires over the medium and long term. We are working diligently with the team at Selwyn District Council to make sure that all of the asset data that we have is accurate and up to date, which will enable us to make better informed investment decisions, and we will keep you as our shareholder up to speed with where those things are at. We are accelerating and operating at pace. We have some pretty hard deadlines coming up for end of June so that we start our operation as a billing entity on the 1st of July. And as a result, we're trying to fast track operational maturity and our ability to execute. So we're streamlining our water related processes across the organisation. We're configuring new systems that enable us to bring clean data in so that we have the data and analytics capacity and capability that we need, and ultimately to better inform future investment decisions. We are required under the Act to provide you with a copy of our proposed water services strategy. That planning is now underway. The Selwyn Water Limited Board has met for its first time in 2026 already, over a course of 2 days, and that is the principal core foundation document that we are working on that you will see shortly. In addition to that, there's the Strategic Asset Management Plan, our Significance and Engagement Policy, which you will need to approve as council on recommendation from us as the CCO, and those things will be brought to you along with the budget during the first quarter of this year to give you ample opportunity as the shareholder to consider them and provide feedback to us. As part of our shift changes to more direct community engagement, now that the transfer process has been completed pre-Christmas, you'll start to see Selwyn Water spend a little bit more time, albeit quietly, but in public. So Alex and the team have been visiting with various community boards, various residents associations, so you'll start to see those sort of things happen, but very quietly and carefully. Pleased to confirm that the Selwyn Water Limited's asset management system has been successfully cut over and completed, and that system is now live. So we have new data that we are building all of the time to make sure that things are current and up to date. That's a significant milestone for us, and it was delivered in line with the plans and the timelines that we shared with you once this new council was recently formed after the last elections last year. That means that it's going to enable us to give faster progress on addressing updates and fixes to asset data, and will bring the use of modern cloud-based platforms that will support improvements in efficiency and productivity and ultimately better value for money. Our 2026 work program, if I say this fast enough it'll sound easy, but it's not. We've got obviously the wash-up period under the transfer agreement, which concludes at the end of June this year. We'll be finalising our draft strategy and a significant engagement policy, both of which we'll be sharing with you, and that will include budgets. We'll be configuring the billing system for direct customer engagement, and we are doing some user acceptance testing on that at the moment to make sure that we don't make any mistakes as that cutover occurs. And we'll be preparing for that, the first rollout publicly of our first performance reporting and delivery program as per the statement of expectations that you have of us as our shareholder. So we continue to focus the effort and attention of the organisation on safe, resilient, affordable and trusted water service delivery, and all the while focusing too on public health, environmental sustainability, and the ability for residents and ratepayers to enjoy the water services that they deserve and need across the district. So those are my opening comments. I will leave that there, and Alex and I and the rest of the team are available to answer any questions that you might have coming out of our report. Thank you, Lydia.
Cool. I think, Murray, just flagged there, I was just thinking about public engagement and how, can you explain a little bit more about how you've shaped that and why you've shaped it the way that you have?
We are working on an engagement plan that we'll present at some point too. What we've been trying to do is make ourselves available whenever we have had an invitation or a request, and just kind of talking to people about the establishment process, the transfer, just giving them an idea of who we are and what we're doing and the kind of the basic principles that we are trying to apply with this. There will be a more coming out of the significance and engagement policy. There will be a proper plan for more formal engagement. This is just introducing ourselves to the community.
Wonderful. So with that significant engagement policy, when we get that for approval, we will also see what your plan is around public engagement.
Yes.
Correct. And so I think for me, I'm just trying to get clear in my head around the touch points that we have in the coming months. And so we will have that significant engagement policy come to us for approval. We will have the draft water services strategy, which is effectively the numbers and the impact of what that will be onto households and statement of expectations. So those are the things that happen in the next few months that we have touch points with Selwyn Water Limited.
Yes, and in addition, there are the frequent informal meetings that you and I have. There's the operational working group meetings at an executive level that occur on a weekly basis. And then we have our regular briefings to you as councillors directly that are scheduled, I think, within your council work program and the Selwyn Water Limited board work program as well. So during the early stages of any engagement and establishment, the more time we spend in the room together, the better, because we can raise and surface issues and identify opportunities and convert them as we see as appropriate. Thank you.
Alex, I'm just wondering if you can, in the paper that we've got here around the early progress and value add initiatives, whether you can talk to those and the benefit that has been provided with those.
Yes, of course. I think that with any of these processes, you need to kind of look a little bit deeper than on your kind of business as usual day to day. So we've been verifying records and establishing a baseline that's across billing, assets, performance, compliance, and that has been a very good kind of exercise to get the team very focused on fresh water and wastewater. We are looking at centralizing the project data, having a single source of the truth, which will, deliver some efficiencies, but also allow us to kind of monitor budgets, completions, provide community with updates, which are been one of those key themes that keep coming up whenever I'm talking to people in the region. We also been looking at developing processes, SOPs, codifying our knowledge so that we can provide with a much more consistent approach to our services. Yeah, so not kind of relying so much on who do you talk to, but just having a consistent process that we can monitor, we can ensure that we adhere to. And it's very helpful. A couple of team members have said, that having that clarity now has helped them hugely with their job, because they know what they do and they know how it needs to be done and they know kind of how the performance is going to be assessed. And the other thing that we are working on that will add value is looking at the sequencing of our kind of big projects, right? So we got a number of things on the list that we need to work through. With it, transition has given us the opportunity to ask some questions as to, have we got the time, the sequencing of these things correct? Are there several of these projects that perhaps better form part of a larger piece of work? And all of this aims to move towards a kind of program of work that will be more comprehensive than a list of a whole lot of independent projects. So to date, I think those are the key things. From an operational perspective, we have introduced timesheets with the team, which give us some kind of greater visibility on what areas might require some resourcing. It gives us visibility in terms of how to prioritize activities. We're trying to, minimize the numbers of, lengthy meetings that we have when sometimes the outcome isn't clear, so that we got people focusing on their core business and deliver value for the community. I'll pause there.
Cool. Thank you, Alex. Look, I think we'll go to councillors for questions. So first up, we have Samuel.
Thank you, Jinpin. For the 13 odd people that are online currently, What's it going to cost our ratepayers?
We are working on the assumptions of what was provided to us through the long-term plan. Those efficiencies that I talk about, I think will flow into our operational cost. I'm confident on that. But at the moment, and primarily because of the timing of the transaction, we're just working on the assumptions that Selwyn District Council had made on the long-term plan.
Cool. So when will we be able to disclose those figures to our constituents on what that glass of water is going to cost them?
We've got a draft budget that we're preparing that will come out on the 11th of this month. That will be shared with the Selwyn Water Limited board, and then will be shared with you as the shareholder. We're not disclosing things. We're doing the process of a budget build. So we're actually taking a sensible, measured stewardship approach to making sure we've got the budgets right. Alex's point in relation to the long-term plan means that we are inheriting a current set of rate charges for water services. Disaggregating that revenue from the Selwyn District Council revenue line is not an easy or a simple process. So that's part of the budgeting process that we're going through at the moment, and we'll have a first crack at it on the 11th of February for you.
Awesome. Thank you.
And Samuel, just to add to that, we are making the transition in the middle of the financial year. Right, so there's part of this financial year that sits with the STC, and then the other half with us. So that creates a little bit of noise on the figures, but it will all become clear very soon.
Cool. I think you bring up a really great point, and it's something that our community is asking, and we know, and we're putting a fair bit of pressure on these guys to deliver this draft budget. But I think for all of us, when we go through the annual plan process, we also need to know what are the water bills as well, because ultimately it's the household impact for our people. So, yeah, it's a good question. Sophie.
Yeah, kia ora team, and thank you to everybody else from Selwyn Water who's here as well. I guess my question is mostly around the timing of the significance engagement policy consultation as opposed to the water services strategy, which I know, strictly speaking, the board is not required to do public consultation on the water services strategy, but we do know that that is something that our community would like to see happen. But I guess without an SEP, we kind of can't necessarily dictate that, but we do have one of our own at council, and that level of policy or strategy does sit very highly in needing to be discussed with community as opposed to presented. And I was just wondering if you could share any thoughts on that.
Thanks, Sophie. Look, a couple of things. We are a CCO owned wholly by the council. So our immediate and direct responsibility is to you as the shareholder. The legislation is clear in terms of what the expectations are upon us as the CCO. How we negotiate and work through that together as shareholder and CCO will be formed up in the significance and engagement policy. So we will need to have a series of ongoing conversations about the best approach that serves all of the requirements around the water services strategy and the significant and engagement policy.
So would you be open to public consultation on the water services strategy?
We're open to having a conversation with you as shareholder about what the best approach to that would be given the requirements of the legislation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks, Sophie. Denise.
Yeah, thank you for that. I like the idea of the single source of truth in the fact that this whole process is going to bring everything together so we have it all in one place. I think that's great. Sort of along those lines, what sort of access, and this might be going a bit ahead of where you're at, what sort of access will residents have to their water usage data so they can make savings if they need to and have some control over what they spend? Do you have a website or an app or something that they would be able to use?
Great question. Yes, that's one of the things that we're working on. We want people to have access to their water usage. Pretty much, I think last time we were here, we were saying, what do you do with your telecommunications, where you can see how many minutes you have used or how many messages you have sent. In order to achieve that, we will need to get some very reliable data out of the network, and also we need to get some digital tools that would allow us to collect that and display. But that's where we're going. Mary, I think, talked about last time we were here about the importance of that clarity to avoid, big surprises.
Yeah.
So we'll be aiming to roll out. It won't happen in February, right? But we'll aim to roll out as soon as we can to everyone. And that package likely will include also notices, any kind of weather-related information that we need to provide to people, usage and so on. So yeah, we're very focused on developing a portal, that will allow that information to flow both ways. And also we want that two-way thing is really important, so that we can get that feedback directly from the community, not just on a consultation. I think it's kind of Sophie was saying, we hear very loud and clear from you that community engagement, deep and meaningful, it's quite critical for us going forward.
Lovely, thank you, because really it's the bottom line for our ratepayers is what they're going to be paying. So thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Denise. Elizabeth.
You've talked about a direct community communications. I just want to know if you've had that conversation of what that looks like. Is it an 0800 free phone number, or is it just channeling in from Snapsend Solve, or can do the public drop-in? Obviously, we've got a wide variety of needs from the different people in our community, so I'm just hoping that will be something that's factored in.
I think it's all of the above, Elizabeth, and I think it needs to be built around the needs of the community. Direct engagement is really important to me. I think, I will envisage over the coming months, we'll be turning up and just having a chat with people, at the same time supporting that through information through websites or apps or different channels. So it's not a one model fits all, and definitely we don't want the customers having to adjust to what Selwyn Water thinks that is appropriate. We want Selwyn Water to adjust to what our customers and community think is appropriate.
Great, thank you. Sorry, will that also be incorporating a community feedback response component?
Yes, sorry, I tried to address that when I was talking to Denise. So we want that to be a two-way conversation, and not, as I said, to be limited to a formal consultation. We want that to be, and how we do that, what are the kind of the platforms that we can use to do that in a meaningful way, is kind of where we want to get to.
Mm-hmm. Community requests, how will these be best delivered to Selwyn Water Limited? So I guess that's if it's coming through to us in at a group meeting or something.
It can for now, and I think it can continue, but we will have some channels for people to kind of send those directly to us. But we want to engage more, and we want to do whatever work for the community. So all of the above, we'll just deal with it.
Chlorine taps in every town for public access. Is that a possibility? Because that's probably one of the biggest things that I'm getting asked about by my constituents.
I probably want...
Chlorine free. We don't want chlorine, sorry. Chlorine free taps.
I was going to say, I don't think we have
sorry,
chlorine taps
Alex.
on our plants. But
Total typo there.
I think, Elizabeth, that I can't answer to the question right now, but we are very keen to get those kind of requests. So the fact that people are talking to you about it, they can come to us and we can build into the plans.
Cool. Some people are against smart meters. Is there alternative options, or is it going to be mandatory for everyone to have a smart meter applied, because that's a huge additional cost onto the ratepayers per household?
I think we need to kind of talk about that because smart meters are very important in terms of reducing the risk of having billing issues and all of that. The more that you remove the kind of the human interaction from this, the more you automate the system, you reduce that risk. So to provide information, you know, on a kind of real time to everyone on the phone or the computer, whatever, it's going to require some form of technology to do that. If the issue is cost rather than functionality, I think that's where we can look at how can that be done in a way that is not going to increase the cost for the household. So, you know, could potentially in the future be part of our kind of design standards, so that, you know, when you build a new development, you have to put some of the things. They're not expensive. I guess what I'm saying, the conversation that we need to have with you or with the community that's interested in this is, are the concerns with functionality, or the concern is, you know, with cost? Because the functionality, I think, is really important to get that digital environment that we are trying to build.
Thank you.
Cool. Sarah.
Thank you both. I guess reflecting on what you've presented, you know, obviously we applaud opportunities for improvement, especially where they have tangible upside for customer experience and water saving and cost to ratepayers, obviously. Just, I guess, following on from Denise talking about portal development, you've also touched on systems to create operational efficiencies. It seems that there's been a lot of systems building going on within Selwyn Water at the moment, and obviously all of that comes at a cost. Presumably, are these sort of pretty bespoke to us, or would there be the opportunity to offset some of the cost of that? Because I'm sure that this isn't the only conversation happening around the country regarding systems.
Yeah, that's correct. So we are trying to, and often when we talk about systems, it's not necessarily kind of digital systems. Sometimes it's just kind of developing SOPs. It's part of a framework that would allow us to, you know, focus the resources on the things that are, you know, more important, measure how productive we are, assess the costs and stuff. But you're absolutely right. Being an early mover, being a kind of first adopter means that we hopefully be able to leverage some of that. For some point, you know, we discuss with other regions about how we might be able to support them. We will look at recovering some of those costs.
So sitting amongst that, is the requirement of us that's incorporated in the statement of expectation, which is to identify appropriate partnership opportunities, which mean that we might be able to offset some of the initial establishment costs associated with Selwyn Water. That's been an approach that's been encouraged by central agencies because they don't want to be having agencies or other local authorities doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. Now, if you're in the big four consulting firms or other service providers, they probably don't want to hear that. But in terms of us being able to deliver ongoing value for money, if we can offset those costs through a shared services back office function with other water services organisations, we'd be silly not to. But we have to bring that to you as the shareholder, because that may change the way that things are structured from what we do in the office, but won't change what happens with customers.
Great, awesome. And the only other thing was really around, you know, there's obviously going to be a lot of information needing to go out to our communities in the next few months, and just really ensuring that the communication and engagement plan is well communicated with us so that we can support that through our communities.
Yes, it is. We have Nisha somewhere over there. So, preparing our plan, our community engagement plan, and she's working closely with PIP and the team, and so that kind of collaboration, I think Mary alluded to before, is working really well, and we want to make sure that we continue to travel through this journey together.
Cool. I think there have been no other questions. I think there's an opportunity. Is there anything else, you know, for maybe our public or people that are listening online? Any comments that you would like to make in closing remarks?
Look, just a closing comment from me, Lydia, and again, thank you for the chance to be with you in a public setting. It's important for us to be seen and to be heard. When we consider the role that a water organisation and a services utility company plays in delivering value for money, it's overlaid with public health requirements. It's overlaid with sensible investment and the expenditure of ratepayers' money. and the team across Cell and Water have that writ large in the way that they approach things. This is not a wasteful environment. This is an environment that we carefully consider the expenditure of dollars because ultimately it's not our money we're spending, it's ratepayers' money. Thank you.
Thank you. And look, I really look forward to the draft numbers coming back. I think this is a big crunch point for us with those numbers and with our annual plan and putting those together for people. So, I know that people are waiting for that and especially around that significant engagement policy. So I think, I look forward to the next meeting that we have here in this room to discuss those. So thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
much
Thank you.
appreciated. Thank you. Councillors, we are running quite behind today, and my apologies for that. That responsibility sits with me, but we will take a 30-minute. I know that we've got the team here for Lincoln Town Centre briefing, but we have been in this room for 3 hours, so we will go for a break, and we will see them back here at 1 o'clock. Thank you. Have an update regarding Lincoln Town Centre. So welcome to the team here, and I will hand over to you to run through Lincoln Town Centre.
Yeah, thanks, Lydia. I might do a brief intro for the team. So today we're going to give you a briefing on Lincoln Town Centre. Also want to acknowledge our head contractor, Fulton Hogan, sitting along the back there. I think David's going to introduce them when he comes to his briefing. So we're going to focus mostly on stage 1 today. You'll know there are 4 stages to the project. The briefing today will focus on stage 1. And I acknowledge we've had lots of questions from several councillors, and the briefing intends to try and cover those questions off. This is a really challenging project. I think any time you're working in a built-up urban environment, the team are challenged to kind of balance the need to get the work done quickly and efficiently with making sure they mitigate the impact to community and businesses. But we want to acknowledge off the bat that the community has been affected here. David's going to spend some time today talking around some of the steps we've taken to try and mitigate that impact to the community. However, I expect that this is going to be an ongoing conversation around what we can continue to do and continue to work with the community to try and mitigate that impact. It's an important conversation, and we're certainly open to continuing that. At the same time, we don't want to lose sight of just how awesome this project is. This is a really exciting project for Lincoln. It's a significant infrastructure upgrade, and it's long overdue. It's going to be great for Lincoln and great for the community. So I think I'll leave it at that by way of introduction and hand back to the team through the briefing.
Yes, good afternoon everybody. As Tim said, I've got Luke here on my right and John on my left. And over to the side here we've got Tara and Andrew from Council who have been and are involved. And then we've got Fraser, Emma, Susie, and Lyndon from Fulton Hogan. So obviously here out of their own interest, but also they're available to answer questions as we go through as well if we need to. So just a very quick briefing so that I think people are probably aware, but the project is made up of stages 1, 2, 3 and 4. This is almost exclusively around stage 1, and our plan obviously is going forward as we get progress stages 2 and 3 and 4. We'll come back and have some further reports on that. So what are we doing? As Tim noted, this is actually an infrastructure project primarily. It's a once-in-a-generation thing. There's lots of services, sewer, stormwater pavements, footpaths, traffic signals, and in fact about 2/3 of the cost is actually about basic infrastructure. Water is not really part of it. There's a little bit, but not a lot. That reason for that is the water is actually not at the end of its life at this point in time, so it doesn't coincide with this time frame. Streetscaping is about 1/3 of the total spend. It's obviously dominated by the work that's happening in stage 1. Stages that follow other stages are less. Why are we doing it? As we said, it's effectively an infrastructure project to replace end-of-life infrastructure. Things like the road pavement have actually been up for renewal for several years and have been deferred. Effectively, it's been kicking the can down the road, and that's obviously costing money. And from my recollection, the last upgrade was about 25 years ago, and it was actually relatively minor compared with what's actually happening now. So I don't think there's been anything in the subsequent years. And the big thing is all about trying to modernise Lincoln Town Centre, set it up for a prosperous future, encourage private investment. And I think people are already aware that the Logic Group is looking to do a development out there now. And it's about trying to make Lincoln a destination where people actually want to go to and will invest in and spend time. This is just a little bit of a couple of photos of what the current situation is at the moment. Probably in the photo in the middle at the bottom, you can see there's a bit of a patchwork quilt of patches and things in the road, and on the right is sort of some artist's impression of how it is intended to look. This is the stage 1 scope, so sorry there's no street names on here, so apologies for that, but it goes from the left hand side just to the west of Westbelt, and it runs through to the Liffey Stream on the right hand side, plus obviously there's the 2 car parks and the side streets that join into it as well. Safety is something that I think that is of critical importance to all of us, and something there's obviously a whole lot of risk associated with, but the sort of the 5 top risks that have been highlighted on the project is obviously the interface between the public and pedestrians, traffic management, moving plant, services overhead and underground, and excavations. So there has been a few incidents life to date. There was a subcontractor who slipped off a vehicle and injured themselves. We had a member of the public who broke their wrist when they were walking across a temporary pedestrian path across private land that was only in place for a few days while Kinetics were doing some power work. And then there has been some sort of unacceptable behaviour that's been displayed to the contractor staff from time to time as well. Those ones have been reported. There could be others as well that people have heard about, so but they haven't come through the official channels to the team. Program. This is a very generic approach, but it's sort of trying to highlight how, in principle, the program works. So obviously the northern and southern car parks opened in August last year. So that was prior to Fulton Hogan starting in late October. To date, things are progressing pretty well, generally on time and budget. There's a few variations that are being worked through, and as we get some answers around them, we'll obviously report on anything of any significance. The broad order of work is that pre-Christmas it was all about the utilities. Unfortunately, most of those, or a lot of those, were on footpaths, so the pedestrian side of things was significantly impacted. Currently, the focus is on stormwater drainage, so that's obviously having an impact on traffic more so than pedestrians because it's down the middle of the road. So, and then moving into the pavements and surfacing and footpaths and streetscaping. There is a lot of concurrent activity, so as I say, treat this as being a sort of a broad thing as opposed to being one thing following the other. And the target completion date is July, in the middle of this, late July this year. So I think we're all aware that there has been some feedback around pedestrian management and traffic management, so people have been listening to that, and there's a whole raft of things. There's only just a few of them, but that Fulton Hogan have been implementing over recent weeks. But there's things like putting refuges in the middle of the road where practically possible. Signage for crossing points, levelling out some isolated areas where there was perhaps some things that could become more trip hazards, and then straightening out fences so that it helps people be able to see from one end to the other and clearing routes through and things. And just on the right there you can just see some pavement markings that they installed literally in the last few days at pedestrian crossings, just to sort of help people to guide them through and around the place. The gate, I know this is obviously a very hot topic, but just a little bit of background. The whole situation has been going on for 15 months or more. Over that time frame, the landowner has requested through council to be able to open up access, and the response has always been that if he is able to provide some plans and demonstrate how safety and security issues and things will be dealt with, then council is more than happy to consider it. Unfortunately, that has never happened, so that's why we've got to the point where we are. There's obviously across private and public property or land, which just adds some complexity. And the two big things that we're having to work through is obviously the Health and Safety Act. It's quite a demanding requirement, and it affects everybody in this room, the landowners, the tenants, public, pedestrians, motorists. It has a significant impact. And unfortunately, there's most of it we can't contract out of. We have to do it. That's what the law is. And doesn't matter what we say or instructions we give or anything else, we can't contract out of it. The other one that has a big impact with these things is a thing called CEPTID, which is all about crime prevention around pedestrians. So it's all about trying to design things and build things that lessen the likelihood of criminal activity. So things like dark alleyways, areas where people can conceal themselves and jump out and surprise people in a non-nice manner. And not being able to see from one end to the other is also something that is sort of a real challenge to be able to deal with. So with those things in mind, the current situation is that we've, following feedback and stuff, we've obviously recently just put in a footway through private property. You can see that photo on the right-hand side. You can see the red line where it shows the path and the sort of the dog leg in the middle. We're aware that we have got some health and safety and CEPTID issues that we can't actually address, we haven't been able to address in the time frame to date. So we've got somebody manning the site who is available to assist. It's not compulsory that he assists people, they're just available if people require any assistance to get through the site. And we've also restricted the hours so that we're avoiding those dark alleys, quite literally, that we want to try to avoid. We are getting some specialist CEPTID advice. In fact, there's a person on site at 2 o'clock today to have a look through things to give us some advice, and then that will give us some guidance on how we look to implement the next stage of opening things up so that we can then hopefully increase the hours that it's open and ideally remove the manning from the site as well. The plan is that it is temporary and we'll have it in place until the footpath that you can see there along the street frontage is sort of practically completed and is open back up again generally to the public. There's about 100 people a day using it. The car park time restrictions are in the process of being removed. Excuse me, I'm not sure whether they're... Not yet, but it's imminent, literally, hopefully hours or a day at the most sort of thing. The cost is we're still adding up the numbers, but it's going to be in the order of $30,000 to $50,000, and that's coming out of the project budget. And that's really around the fact that we have to probably end up hiring lights, mirrors so people can see around corners, put in an asphalt ramp to deal with a step and things like that. And then also the thing that probably should not be forgotten is that the indirect costs are far from insignificant as well, so which is something that has an impact, but not directly, I suppose, on the project that people don't see. So communications, this effectively there's two lots of communications, I suppose you think of it that way. There's a lot of day-to-day stuff. So Fulton Hogan, which is Emma and Susie here, are primarily focused on that. So Emma is based on site full-time as a stakeholder manager, and she is talking to people around the site, the retailers and everybody else, 40-odd times a month that she records, and probably potentially an equal number that she doesn't record. And she's just there all day, every day, dealing with that. On top of that, there's electronic newsletters, drop-in sessions at the Fulton Hogan office. I know that there's collaboration with the schools and preschools. In fact, I think you went to one this morning, was it, Luke? There's a website, walkabouts around the businesses, and information available at the library. And then on the bigger picture, which is primarily where Tara's got her focus is and looking forward, is that we're trying to get people to think about the big picture. We really want to create an environment where we can to try to attract people to the town centre. It's great that they could be able to move around freely when they were there, but we have to actually get people going back to the town centre in the first instance to be able to make a significant improvement, which is all about incentivising people to our community to shop locally. I'm going to focus on the positivities. Rightly or wrongly, I think the sort of negativity obviously drives negativity, and we need to sort of try to break that cycle, in my opinion. And some of the things that Tara's looking at is like promoting businesses in the e-newsletter, which she started last week. She's got a meeting scheduled for another, I think it's next week, 9th of February, with the Community and Economic Development team, looking at having a passport type scheme where people get stamped as they go into different premises, and when they get a full book they can go into a monthly prize draw, and for the kids having an Easter hunt scavenger, Easter egg scavenger hunt along a similar sort of a frame, having a stall at the market, business pop-up sections, and also the possibility of even trying to get some of yourselves along to be able to part of the interactions around with people around the businesses, so we're actually going as a joint team and effort. So risks and opportunities. I've tried to focus on the opportunities, I suppose, but then perhaps trying to highlight some of the issues that need to be dealt with them, as opposed to focusing on risks, so that makes sense. I'm always like to try to think we're got a glass half full and we're trying to fill it up, as opposed to the other way around. But there is certainly opportunities to accelerate the program, but with that there is a whole lot of things that need to be looked at and considered. So, some of the options might be literally just closing the road, or having one-way traffic. The problem we have is that the detour routes are not very attractive, and I would suspect that the problems that come out of doing that might be greater than the ones we're trying to solve. There always be some additional cost. I know there's been lots of talk about night work and weekend work, but there's lots of things we need to work through and talk through with that, with being able to practicalities of it. People working 7 days a week is not really something that's going to fly very far. So the impact, the improvements you might get out of that are probably not anywhere near as much as might first be perceived. Obviously, going to have risk of potential worker burnout. And I think the other one as well is that noise limitations, particularly for weekend work, for night work, are actually quite restrictive. And one of the biggest one is the reversing beacons or beepers on construction plant, and they're obviously very piercing to make people alert for them. But it would be a brave person who would instruct anybody to turn them off to be able to work at night when people are at the most risk and most vulnerable. So it's a catch-22. We'd slow down the program, so you're actually getting the contractors to focus on smaller areas, which means that there's more areas opened up at one time. Really, it just extends a period of time. It would probably also add additional cost, and it risks pushing the work into summer, and probably also some summer work into winter, which is, has a quality risk as well. The reason why additional cost is on both of them is because the contract period that's been specified isn't just using a dartboard to figure out the time frame. It's based on calculating it sensibly, and then that gives the parameters for Fulton Hogan then to develop a detailed program. And so they've developed an optimal program from cost and productivity and getting things done, and also taking into consideration the impact on businesses and things like that. But unfortunately, you can't have cake and eat in these situations, so they're doing their best. But because of that, they've optimised things, so we've got the optimal cost as well as a result of that. So doing anything different is unfortunately probably will end up with additional costs. Just a few other bits and pieces is that obviously, with the increase, there is an increased risk on council and all of us, the public, the landowner and the tenants associated with using, accessing across private land. There's also a rates for emission option within council, or not an option, a rates for emission policy that could be considered under certain circumstances. It's obviously based around people applying for it and using evidence, and then it can be worked through. And obviously the big thing, as I said before, is that having a big focus on the big picture and the communications and the culture and getting the community on board and asking them to come back and support their retailers, in my view, is probably going to have the biggest impact. And from my experience, and I think also from others, that is also where you get your best bang for buck. And that is that. So...
Cool, thanks team. I think the thing that comes to my mind is around project timeline, and you say July. Are you tracking on time? I know the weather's been poor, it's not ideal for construction season, you know, it's supposed to be good weather, but it seems that someone got confused about the weather we ordered. But yeah, I really want to know how close we are sitting to timeline.
There is discussions going on about that, literally, which is say right this minute, because the people are here who are discussing it. But there are discussions going through with that at the moment, and there is a risk that that time frame could change. But I suppose it'll be better to talk about that in the future once we have some more confidence around the direction that those things are travelling in.
Okay. We'll go to councillors, and so I have Elizabeth up first.
Yeah, would we be able to pull up the slide again, please, for the walk through? Yeah, no, that back. Well, either one, that's fine. So, stage 1 on the map, which is not what you've pulled up here, but stage 1 on the map only shows one portion of the road, but the reality is they're pretty much ripping the whole road all at one hit. Was that the best way to do this work? And it couldn't be proportionally moved up the road in one
Sorry,
hit?
when you say the plan, you mean the stage 1 plan?
Yeah, or maybe we'll go back to that slide. So the very first slide that you showed us.
That one.
No, the very first one.
Next one. Keep going.
That one. So you've got them in stages, but in effect, you've got far more road cones than that, haven't you? And more of the road blocked off than what's just showing there in the red?
So, yes, you are probably correct. So the stage 1 is the area of work. So with traffic management, there's obviously a lot of rules and regulations around that, and part of that is actually having the traffic management for infrastructural facilities, I suppose, in place at the starting point of construction.
Okay.
So you can't start it at the start of construction and then having it leading in. You've got to do all that in advance, so you end up with quite an extended. So yes, you are correct in that.
Okay, let's go back to that next slide, please. Yep. So obviously I understand safety, and we have health and safety, but my first impressions, having looked at the fact that the constituents walk down there all the time to the Lincoln Family Barber, and you're saying that we have mirrors, we're going to need mirrors, a manned gate that closes at certain times, maybe that's fair enough, but we're pretty much paying someone to hand walk them through the alleyway at this point in time, is that correct?
No, we're not paying somebody to hand. We've got somebody who is available on request if required.
I mean, it just, to me, if I was a constituent looking at this, I'd be saying, are you kidding me? People are walking down this all the time to the barber. They're going to be looking at this very unfavourably, that it's costing us between 30 and 50k just for them to continue to walk down to the barber and then through to the car park. Is there any real strong justification for that, or are we a little bit overzealous with our H&S?
I don't think we're overzealous. The Health and Safety Act is very, very strong in what we are required to do. We can't contract out of it. I was actually looking up today, New Zealand's health and safety stats aren't very good. We're much worse than Australia, and Australia is much worse than the UK. And that an article I read actually just before said that even if we could improve things to meet Australia, that would save the New Zealand economy $1 billion per annum. So that's the sort of things that, for every person who argues that side of as you are, and I'm not saying I disagree with you, but we have the other side as well. Yeah. We need to get the balance.
I understand that with domestic violence and travelling in a car at top speed in country lanes and things, but walking down past the Lincoln Family Barber to the car park, I wouldn't have.
Do you want to skip to the next slide so we can have a bird's eye view of.
I think one of the key things here is that as council, as part of the planning, we've had SEPTED reports completed, and it quite clearly states that we should not allow access through these properties until SEPTED issues have been addressed. So again, that's a key thing that we've got to make a conscious decision that we're going to go against a report that was commissioned as part of the design and the due diligence of this, to then allow things to happen. So that's the thing that we're trying to mitigate at the moment, to allow this access to happen, and then working through how we remove that risk, identify to you guys what the risks we're asking you to accept, for us to then allow direct access or free access.
Well, I guess
it's a risk-based approach.
I guess and it comes down to what are the risks we're willing to accept, and I would like to think that common sense prevails slightly, and maybe I need to walk through it myself. Thank you.
I'll just pass on to Steve.
No, the team I provided the answer. Look, I think what we've talked about here is they've given a background of about 15 months, and but we have heard, and this is the message I think we wanted to pass on, is we actually have heard from the community that actually this is really important, and the team have found a way to get something open quick to support the local businesses, but at the same time trying to manage and mitigate the risk for the people using that space. And as I've said, we've got a SEPTED report happening today, which is reconfirming the position, so that we can then make an informed and better future-focused decision. We've tried to respond really quickly to the community's needs, but also we're doing that mindfully.
Thanks, Steve. Tracy.
Firstly, thank you. Post-Christmas, with the speed that this has been dealt with, that is appreciated, and it is appreciated in the community. I've got a couple of things that I just can't let go. Where that arrow is, at the top of that arrow is a car park, where people can freely park, even in the middle of the night when it's dark, and they walk to get to their car. They walk from Gerald Street or the Barbers, and they walk in the exact same way as they would be walking now that there's a gap. And I think that's the sort of thinking that council needs to, and Fulton Hogan or whoever, need to convey clearly to the community why it would be okay to run a risk of walking to my car along that path, but it's not okay to run that risk coming from the car park in. So that's me attempting to be helpful by conveying to you the sorts of things that are confusing the community. I think also a number of these things in terms of the challenges that the businesses are facing were foreseeable. And I take your point about the community, but having spoken to the businesses, they've all said that the Lincoln community is already supporting them the utmost. The two biggest problems that they're facing is that a huge percentage of their revenue is passing trade. Now, I'm not saying that anybody can do anything about that, but what I'm suggesting is that to say to the community we're going to try and drive more Lincoln people or whoever to use these businesses isn't going to alleviate that quite significant revenue problem. So again, how that is phrased, I would suggest needs to be thought about very carefully from a Selwyn District Council reputational point of view. The last question those weren't questions. The first question that I have is that Gerald Street out there in front, stage one, has pretty much been a no-go, nobody can park, nobody can do any of that. Now, I was coming in today and I noticed that on this side of Gerald Street, outside a number of the premises where the post shop, the Hammer Hardware, the sushi, you can tell I live in Lincoln, that is all clear today. And so one of my questions is, can people park there now as they are passing through? And the adjunct to that would be on the other side of the road, that from particularly the Cottage Cafe and the pharmacist's perspective, when will that far side of Gerald Street be available again for any passing cars to stop, because those are the things that the businesses are looking at. The reality is that there are businesses in Lincoln that are having discussions last week about closing the doors. That's not Selwyn Council's fault, it's not Fulton Hogan's fault, but that's a reality. Getting that passing trade back sooner rather than later might help them to hang on. I equally accept that that might not happen. So that's my question about those businesses needing to know if that passing trade is going to have somewhere to stop again. If they are, when do you envisage that might be?
So we've always said throughout the life of this project that all on-street parking will be removed as part of this project, and this design was approved unanimously by the council some time ago. As part of the program and recognising that issue, we agreed to get the car parks built first. So the businesses, we promised the businesses they would have alternative short-term parking established before we start on stage one.
Sorry, I'm not on mic anymore. So those car spaces that I can see.
Yeah.
So those car spaces that I saw today outside all of those shops are not actually for anyone to use.
You're talking about, is it the floor in front of Hammer Hardware?
Yeah, across there.
So that's temporary, and so that's Fulton Hogan going the extra mile to try and find some space that cars can still use while they're not busy in that location. But those parks will be removed soon, and as you can see, we will be building that high amenity area in front of those shops.
And so, Luke, what do you mean by soon?
Soon. Specifically program.
Do you want to, can you come up to the, can you come up to the front just so that, yeah. No pressure.
Sorry, Lyndon. We've got to complete all the drainage first down the middle, which restricts our ability to allow on-street parking down there. We've probably got another, what you say, Fraser, 6 weeks to 2 months to finish that pipe work down the centre of the road. As we complete that drainage down the middle, we will try and recede our fencing. As you can see now with the Liffey Springs, we've tried to bring it back in. Where we can provide those parks in front of those shops, we will try to introduce some of that parallel parking. I'm not sure how that works outside the fish and chip shop, because that's going to be, we're trying to get a crew into there as soon as we can to do all that car parking up and whatnot. So they might not return in that place, but we'll try to keep it outside Hammer Hardware for as long as we can.
Yep. I appreciate that, Lyndon, and I think those are the sorts of things. So when you say soon, I think these businesses need more than soon. They need some time frames. I accept it's a moving feast, the weather amongst other things, but from the business's point of view, soon or whatever, it doesn't give them something to plan their businesses on, and that doesn't mean we're suggesting that they can hold you to that either, but it's about tightening up that information flow so that they can do some planning themselves. If they know, those ones outside Hammer Hardware might be there for 6 to 8 weeks, then that they can hold on to some hope.
And just to add to that, initially in the program, we had been communicating that we would not re-establish any parking through there in January onwards. It'd be gone for good. And so this is an opportunity that Fulton Hogan have identified to enable some parking just by looking through. So I appreciate we want certainty, we need to communicate it, and I agree with that. But the flexibility of Fulton Hogan here found an opportunity to provide extra parking that previously wasn't planned.
And that's great. Appreciate it and pass it on to the businesses.
Cool. Thanks, Tracy.
Lydia, can I just add to that?
Yeah.
Councillor McLeod, although I appreciate it's not parking right out in front of the shops, what we did approve yesterday was removal of all parking enforcement within the Lincoln Town Centre. So we're hoping that might help a bit, although I do acknowledge it's not that parking which is right outside of the shops.
Thanks, Tim. Samuel.
Hello. What examples of poor behaviour have staff encountered, please, and what was the precursor to this?
I'm not sure this is the right environment to discuss that.
Maybe you don't need to make it specific.
Yeah.
Maybe it is. Why don't you give an example?
There have been words used that have discouraged Fulton Hogan from operating in the gate area.
In the
And
gate
manning it.
area specifically.
And manning it, yes.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought would have been.
And yeah, hasn't been favourable to help the situation.
Yeah, thank you. Also, I fear that many of these businesses are just standing on 2 feet after the COVID lockdown. A lot of people, although that was some time ago, a lot of these small businesses that are cash flow dependent will still be mitigating the damages from that. And months and months of struggle with cash flow will be the death of them, to put it bluntly. If we don't make provisions for them to increase trade and cash flow and help support them, we will lose the Lincoln Town Centre we know now. Have SDC provided any additional signage for businesses specifically? Could we possibly encourage advertisements? I know that we advertise quite regularly. Boy, that feedback's awful. I understand that we provide quite a lot of advertisements for teddy bears, picnics and whatnot else. I personally think that this funding could probably be better spent actually supporting our community, especially Lincoln.
I'll go to David, and then I'll touch with Alison as well.
So there are some signs in place, and I think today, I don't know if you've done it yet, but they were also replacing them to make some more prominent signs in place, which I think should be in place now. And I think your second point, yes, I think that's part of the future going forward, is we need to be able to be thinking on that bigger picture, I suppose, because sadly we aren't going to be able to replace the passing traffic in the short term. And the only option we really have is trying to generate the community to come into the town and then utilise it and spend their money.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, all those in Lincoln don't buy coffee at the supermarket. Go straight down to your local cafe.
I'll just go to Alison, because she might be able to touch on some other things that are happening in conversations with business.
Yeah, so just in regard to, and I think David alluded to it earlier, there is a rates remission policy there that's adopted as part of the long-term plan. The primary objective of that policy is to enable council to grant either full or partial remission of rates in the cases of financial hardship or disaster events, etc. There was no provision made as part of the project budget. We wouldn't generally have it there anyway. So it's a separate paper we'll probably need to bring back to council to see what that would look like. But there is a policy in place that would enable it.
If you could, please, Alison, I'd really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you. Denise.
Hi. So, yeah, thank you. I've had a lot of feedback going through to Steve, and a lot of improvements have been made. Prior to Christmas, we were getting nowhere. These concerns have been going on for quite a while. And I know I do see Luke quite a bit as well, so he is quite aware of us. I think the problem comes, it's a longer term problem, because it started out with a community that we're not fully consulted with. And I know that we're not into going back in time at the moment, but we have to see why people are getting so upset. And it was the lack of consultation when this town plan started this time around, with a plan that was quite old. So that sort of has put the community on the back foot to start with. There seems to be a mismatch. This isn't really a question, this is a lot of statements. There seems to be a mismatch of the health and safety. Like, I fully understand what you're saying about this walkthrough, but at the same time, the main street is so uneven and so dangerous, it doesn't seem to match up. We've got side streets that are not well lit, and yet we're worrying about this one walk through, and we're going to spend 30 to 50k on it. I can see where the community are getting frustrated because it doesn't seem to make common sense to them, and it just doesn't add up. There's another example of that. I went out with urban planners and we looked at, blocked. If you've only got one way into an alleyway, that's dangerous. That's actually a walk-through, so that's good. There are other things like the library has very bright lights on the library, which are quite dangerous because it means you can't see people who are hidden, etc. But we've never done anything about that. We seem to sort of be focusing on this gateway, seems to have become a big issue that's costing us a lot of money. And I'm not sure where that's going to go.
Probably expand on that a little bit.
Yeah.
It's not just that area that's of concern. The whole site is being treated in the same way. It's not just the alleyway, it's the whole project is treated that way. It just so happens that the people who are observing what is happening around the rest of the place is these guys over here who are working there all day, every day.
Yeah,
so the same approach is being applied where we have inspections and we have people looking at it from a septic perspective and from a health and safety perspective. And yes, you are right, there are bits and pieces that need to happen. And as I say, that Fulton Hogan have been doing things as they are, but the gate is not being singled out as being a one-off thing. It is the project as a one-off thing.
Because where the gate is actually the smoothest part of Lincoln at the moment.
Might be, yeah.
No, it is. Anyway, and I noticed you also said that this upgrade doesn't include the water. When was the water updated in Lincoln? Do we know?
I don't know exactly when all the water supply network was updated in Lincoln. We are doing part of it from Westbelt intersection west.
Okay.
And then stage 2 and 3 will see that extended through there as well. We've talked to the team, which is now Selwyn Water, and they said the assets in Lincoln Township, or the area affected, still have plenty of life left in them. They're not that old, but to get more specifics, I'd have to go away and get you more information.
Yeah, because I know you're doing the stormwater drainage. I'd hate to think that we're then going to have to dig this all up again in 10 years' time or something.
I have the same fear, and I've checked with them many times through this process, and they've assured me that the work we are doing is suitable for what they need.
Okay, thank you. And just finally, the businesses are struggling, and I do think the feedback I've gotten is that some of them feel that, well, they have been told this previously, is that if they don't like it, is leave, and that's not a great way for us to be treating our small businesses. So I just want to put that out there. That came out before this council took over.
I can reassure you that did not come from the project team. Or the
No, it didn't come from the project team. It came from the previous council. It was, if you don't like it, then
I'd object to that,
leave.
to be honest. I don't.
No, well,
we've never had any conversation like that. We've never said anything like that about our businesses, and I can stand by that. And I don't know about my colleagues that have returned to this table, but if you don't like it and you can leave is definitely something that was not said by us.
It was said at a town meeting by a councillor, so perhaps he wasn't representing the whole council view.
But that is not something that we believe in here, and that is not something that our project team believe in, and that is not something that our contractors believe in either. We support our business and our economy, so I'd just object to that.
Okay. Well, we need to really think about these businesses, because two will be gone at least, if not a third one. I think the post office possibly. So we really need to think about what happens in the future for future learnings.
Noted. Cool. Sarah.
Thank you very much. It was always going to be difficult. It was never going to be easy. There's no way to avoid the disruption that unfortunately we're currently obviously experiencing. Just wondering, and I do appreciate the consideration of the Fulton Hogan team, to try and find those solutions where they can along the way, because, anything we can do to make this journey easier for our community is good to see. In terms of, I guess, the normal hours of work that that contractors are spending on site at the moment, the two options that we looked at there were sort of obviously quite far apart in terms of a slowdown or a speed up option. Is there the opportunity at all for any kind of hybrid model there in terms of, utilising, maximising summer hours while we've got them? Nobody wants anyone to burn out over this, but if there's a few extra hours that we can try and claw back some timing.
There probably is, and we can talk through that a little bit more. Probably one of the biggest impacts is around the district plan noise requirements.
Yeah.
So, and like I said before, you get to a point in time during the day when just blowing your nose sort of breaches the district plan requirements.
Yes.
and so having construction things and having, I think lots of us have been here and done this type of thing before. The minute you start to push the boundaries too far and stuff and things, you're not solving a problem, you're just creating another problem.
Yeah.
You're just moving the issue to somewhere else, and then you end up having to deal with that.
Yeah.
An example of that is that I was involved with upgrading the city wall in Christchurch quite a few years ago now. It's a very similar environment. Everybody wanted to do the work at night, so we started doing the work at night. We got so many complaints we had to stop. And that was an environment where there was residential areas were much further away from the city wall than what we've got here.
Yeah.
But that's just an example of how things sadly work, is that, as you said, there's always got to be a challenge, and then we always have to try to deal with things, and it's either going to be one thing or another in most cases.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But we can certainly talk to Lyndon and his team to see if there's any opportunities that we can try to get as much as we can at the time available.
Yeah. No, appreciate that. And I guess in terms of impact on business, I mean, there's no question that it has had a tremendous impact on those businesses, and they're stuck with their overhead costs no matter how much they try to downscale their operational costs along the way. So yes, it is an extremely tough place. I guess in terms of anything that we consider as far as rate remission policies goes, I guess a consideration is that any reduction in rates or refund on rates, I'm not quite sure how it works, is that that goes to the operator of the business rather than the property owner, and that's going to be a pretty difficult one to be able to apply, I'm sure. So, as long as we are trying to put in place measures that are going to get to the actual operators of those businesses who are struggling. My only other question, Luke, was your communication with schools, whether there's anything that we should be aware of in terms of any significant risks that they have identified and would like to have addressed.
We went and saw Lincoln High School this morning. Some of the international students who are unfamiliar with New Zealand transport norms struggle to find the bus stop. So we met with the head of the international student group at the school today and walked the site and talked about how we can improve that and help them through. But that is largely it in terms of feedback from the schools. We did meet with both principals of Lincoln High School and Lincoln Primary School well before construction started, so about the middle of last year.
Yeah.
They had no specific concerns, more about helping, using their channels to communicate with parents and the students about what to expect on Gerald Street and how to navigate things. We are looking at further initiatives, particularly with the primary school on kind of safety sort of things. That there is a program team within Selwyn District Council that does a lot of that sort of stuff regularly, year on year, with many schools. So we're looking to do something a bit extra with Lincoln Primary School too, but that's work in progress.
Great. Yeah, I met with a couple of residents who had concerns about schools going back and just the number of additional traffic movements that there are, especially down that Boundary Road area, and the additional heavy traffic that's going through there. And they were an older couple who were very concerned about, kids getting to school safely. But it sounds like your team are on top of that. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Sarah. Aaron.
Where do I start? And where will I not repeat what others have said. So it's good to hear that you've done some updated signage today. One of the signs by the gate says something to the effect of "Stop, wait to be escorted." So I'm pleased to hear that that sign is actually incorrect. Hopefully it will be removed, and a sign that just says "If you need assistance, speak to the person in the car" might be more appropriate. You don't need to answer that. That's more of a statement.
I was just going to say, probably the only thing to be mindful of was that all that stuff was put in quite literally over a 2-day period from
Good. We're learning and moving on.
to
That's
actually
the
happening,
thing.
so it's not
Yeah, because
perfect.
when I walked up, it was sort of confronting to hear "Stop, wait to be escorted." It was think, what do I need to be worrying about, sort of thing. Anyway, Health and Safety Act. Yes, we can't contract out of it, but and I'm not professing to be an expert, but my understanding is that you need to assess the risks and decide on what mitigations you might put in, and that might be preventing access, it might not be. And I take that the report you're getting by the SEPTED person today will come to the council, and that might give us some options to say keep it closed, keep it open. Is that correct?
Potentially, yes. I suppose the current plan is that we're going to use a SEPTED report. We're hoping that it won't say shut it off. We're hoping it'll be able to say if you do X, or they recommend doing X, Y, and Z. In an ideal world, we can do X, Y, and Z, and then we just do it and it's done. But if we can only do X and Y and we can't do Z, then we might come back to talk to you about that side of things.
Okay. In the presentation, it said that the thinking was that the car park gate was only temporary. Why is that?
Because it was the request around it all is focused around providing increased access from the car park through to Gerald Street during construction. And really, to get a permanent thing, it's all about the landowner providing what his permanent work on his land is going to be, so that council can then assess that to see if it meets council's requirements. And that's the whole focus over the last 15 months is that if the landowner does his bit, then council's more than happy to consider it and do their bit to allow it to happen.
So, I guess the fence being there, that actually stepping back, the fence being there in the first place is kind of puzzling. I know that there's the technical and legal things you needed to work through, but given that the car park was designed to replace car parks that were removed from the street and to provide access, ongoing access to the businesses, it was kind of a head scratcher that the gate is there. Prior to the gate going in, I did actually observe some contractors. I don't know if they were Fulton Hogan staff or some people working for you guys, but they leapt the fence. And once the footpaths are reinstated, that's all well and good, but human nature is to take the shortest course of shortest route to where they want to get. So hopefully we can get to a more permanent solution further down the track. So of the 100 people a day that are going through the gate, how many have been observed that have got harmed?
None to date.
Pleased to hear it. And the adjacent library car park across the road, which is a very similar situation with a large car park adjacent to some businesses in the library, that's operated for a number of years. Are you aware of any harm incidents that have been reported to the council?
We'd have to go away and find out.
Yeah.
So you're not aware at the moment?
Not aware.
No. I think I'll finish there.
Thanks, Aaron. Sophie.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I guess the point with the gate is that we're effectively creating a temporary public right-of-way across private land, and that's why it suddenly turns into this whole thing of trying to meet legal requirements without having to delve too deeply into resource consents and easements and all of this sort of stuff that the landowner may not want to actually take on long term, but they're potentially inviting people to expect this long term and not realizing the hornet's nest that might follow, which is created by a legal system that has been tested by people having accidents and being mugged. hopefully that will not happen here. Anyway, my actual question was around, we've talked a lot about SEPTED, but as Tracy particularly and Denise also mentioned around smoothness of streets and everything, have we done any accessibility audits? Because there's also, like talking to the schools, school-aged children and parents, there's also the different accessibility issues faced by parents with buggies or people in wheelchairs or who need walkers or sticks and that sort of thing, or visual difficulties. Have we checked out that sort of thing?
We have not done specific ones, nothing specific by Fulton Hogan. However, we do have expectations that all trip hazards are dealt with throughout the site regardless of the progress of the site. I know last week they had the AC team go through there and they flattened out a lot of those rough areas on the footpaths and smoothed them out and made them safe. I myself have gone through there and had a good look as well. And also want to reassure that our weekly site meetings, which happen every Wednesday morning, this is the first thing that we talk about is access and safety around site for the public. It is our biggest discussion item that we talk about, and we are very dedicated to ensuring a safe environment, an accessible environment as well for our users. Obviously with the utilities last year, most of the utilities are in the footpath, hence the footpaths were heavily affected. We're now working through the middle of the road, so the footpaths are largely opened and those areas that were pulled up were AC'd to try and create that smooth, flat surface. Obviously we are renewing those footpaths later in the program, so things are moving, but we're continuously assessing the accessibility and the safety and the trip hazards as they come up through the site.
Okay. I guess in that case, the only thing I'll say is it would be good if at some point maybe involve somebody with lived experience of what those access, because it's quite different when you're an able-bodied adult compared to if you're actually the person who's dealing with the trips and the snowless and the diversions. Thank you.
Great. As a question, quickly, because we're starting to go second time.
Hey, is there any provisions in the district plan for the potential to go out to the because obviously there's a discussion whether we go fast or slow with the town progress. Is there a provision in the district plan that could make an allowance in terms of the noise to take on some work over a couple of nights if it was polled to the community and agreed by the majority of the people in the poll?
You go first.
Sorry, I might
So it wouldn't be a permanent thing, but just a couple of nights to...
I'll pass it over to a couple of people who know more about that side of things than I do, or any of us do.
In short, no. The district plan provisions are the provisions and they apply.
Thanks, Bob. Look, I think this has been really useful, not just for us, but also for the public to have this space here in the Q&A. And so I really appreciate you guys coming in here, the presentation, the information, and also for Fulton Hogan joining us to hear the questions that are coming from around this table and to keep the project moving so we can stay on track to hit that July. I know there's some challenges there, and yeah, look, I think, like you say, it's a moving beast, and as long as we're engaging and we're doing the right things and we're talking with our people, which is, you know, what I'm seeing is happening, then, yeah, I think we're doing what we can. And so I appreciate the effort that's gone into this and the way that you guys have adapted quickly to correspondence that's come in from our local residents and local councillors to try and address some of the challenges for our people. But yeah, we'll continue working on this space with our community. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you everybody for your stuff as well.
Cheers. Councillors, next up we have sensitive expenditure. So I will invite Alison, Sonia, Becca, Dom. Quite the team to the table. All right, welcome team. Look forward to your update on sensitive expenditure, and the thing that I note with this is that it is to go to full audit and risk committee as well. So I'll hand over to you and your team, Alison.
Thanks, Lydia. So look, the purpose of this briefing is just to provide councillors with a more fulsome response on where we're up to with sensitive expenditure on the back of the Deloitte audit that took place April last year. You don't hear me? Very rarely do people ask me to talk loudly, more loudly.
Thank you.
Today's the day. So we've got the team here. So what we'll do is we'll run through just a bit of a recap of the audit itself, where we're up to with each of the actions, recognising we've had a number of questions that have came through on this, and also where the assurances and the internal controls are in place, training, and we've also got a draft policy that we can put in front of you as well. I mean, again, the purpose of this reporting will, going forward, go to Audit and Risk Committee, but this has been done in the interest of full transparency as well. So I'll hand over to Becca and Sonia. I'm not sure which one wants to start.
Apparently me. That's great. So thank you, councillors and Mia, for the opportunity to provide this update to you. So the audit that was completed in April last year was reported to the Audit and Risk Committee in May, and following that the team has been working on each of the recommendations within that report, and we've been providing updates as we go on each of those actions, which you can see in the appendices of one of our reports there. So we've already completed a number of the actions that are there. Last year we completed 1 in August, 4 in December, and so there's currently 4 that are remaining that we're currently working on. So there's a number of controls that are in place following that report. So we do have pre-approval requirements that mean that before you spend any money that is part of the category for sensitive expenditure, you are required to get pre-approval before you can actually ask to claim that money back. We have spending limits, we have delegations set so that staff know what they're able to spend, and then we've got a number of management controls in place to ensure that those policies are working. One of the key principles of sensitive expenditure is that we need to evidence the business purpose before we spend any public money. And that is quite clear in our policy and our procedures that we document that when we put claims through. Also, we document and receipts for each claim that staff make and councillors, so that is tracked and traced when we make expenditure. And recently we've been Becca has been creating reconciliation, monitoring and exception reporting on sensitive expenditure. The first focus of this phase has been looking at elected members' expenses, and the reason behind that is the information for that has been a challenge, and for Becca to actually extract from the system and to be able to reconcile it. So we are working on that process to be able to concisely report that to Audit and Risk, which will come through in the March meeting. Do you want to add in?
Yeah, I think it was just going to note, so we're not going to go through the paper in its entirety because we are running behind schedule today and obviously wanting to take the questions as well. So Sonia, I'll let you cover what else you were going to cover.
Yep, absolutely. So I think just so you know, also as part of the internal audit, we review each item as they're completed. So as a as an action owner tells me that they've completed their action, I then review that with them, and we collect the evidence that the process is in place or that a policy has been reviewed and updated. So we're tracking that regularly. The internal audit program itself has we've got a 3-year program, and so we've got a limited number of internal audits that we can actually complete as part of that program. So currently the sensitive expenditure review is not on the plan to be reviewed. So my role as risk manager is to ensure that we are checking those recommendations have been completed.
In the August meeting of the Audit and Risk Committee, we will be reviewing the plan for the program. So if the committee think that they need to look at the sensitive expenditure again in full, we can add that to the wish list and we can decide that. But going forward, we are providing more detailed reporting to the Audit and Risk Committee, so you can see where we have open items and if they're delayed or if they're making good progress, so we can provide that transparency to Audit and Risk every quarter. Also, you see in the pack there that we've got the draft sensitive expenditure policy, and that shows the changes that we've made to that policy to make it clearer to staff of what is appropriate to spend in the sensitive expenditure space, and talks about the processes that we need to follow to get that approved. Also on that, in the pack there is the internal audit tracker with the detail for each recommendation. So if you do have any questions, we're open to the floor.
I think Alison.
Sorry, I was just going to add to what Sonia said as well. So we've got the draft policy there, but we will be looking at the sensitive expenditure policy coupled with travel and gifts, because the three all sort of go hand in hand. So we don't want one that stands out as being completely exclusive of the other.
I think the thing that I note with this is that it should be a standing item on Audit and Risk Committee that is reported on, and I think that is good progress. And the other thing that's flagging with me is that for Audit and Risk to set the audit program, and so that is something that Audit and Risk Committee, we need to sit down and go through that, and there may be some things that we need to prioritise through that work program, which is forefront of mind. I will go to John first.
Thank you, Madam. Yeah, look, the work that's been done, good. The report may not be as clear as I would like it to be on the explicit details. And I suppose the first point that came to mind was that the very clear point that the revision of the sensitive expenditure policy is for the executive leadership team, not for the council. And just reading through it, it seemed to me that this is what the organisation is going to fall or stand on. And the issue is not so much the policies and procedures, the checks and controls, it's that nobody seems to follow them. And I just am at a loss to try and see where that's being addressed. When I read the purpose statement in the draft policy for the ELT and the non-compliance and consequences, I thought they were weak. And I did take the opportunity to inform the Mayor of what I thought may be worthy of consideration. So, you know, that's where I'm coming from, is that it's all very good to have it, but I just don't have the confidence that no matter how rigid we've got our systems and controls, people are following it. And if people aren't following it, is there any consequence? And the classic one would be the item in relation to the mayoral car not being noted in the books. And because we're in public, I won't go any further with that one.
Thanks for your feedback, John. So this policy, you're right, it's an ELT policy and it is only in draft form just now. We're sharing it in the interest of transparency, but we certainly have got the opportunity to go and change it and tighten up on the controls as well.
And if I might add, I mean, I think the purpose of this briefing and following on from the correspondence from the previous year, towards the end of the year, understanding the expectation of the level of reporting and the frequency of the reporting, that is one of the things why we're sharing it today, so that the Audit and Risk Committee meeting, you'll get more of a fulsome explanation, John, so you do get that level of assurance, or we can provide you what assurances we can. And not only doing it for this, but also covering off all of the other internal audit actions that are currently in the progress of being opened and closed, and where we're at in those as well.
thing is that, you know, like just what you've touched on, Steve, is what does the reporting look like to audit and risk? And I know that is something that you're working on doing. And when we're talking about exceptions or someone not following policy, that is where I would expect in that reporting that would be highlighted to audit and risk that process has not been followed through this space. Is that correct?
Yes, so we'll have reporting that talks to the actual dollar values being spent, but there'll also be exception reporting as well. And the exception reporting would come through me, then go to Steve. And that would address any of the concerns, John, that you've alluded to earlier as well.
And that will be part of the audit and risk reporting papers?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Tracy?
I think it's really good to see that we are making progress in the right direction around this, because I'm as sick of sending emails about it as I'm sure everybody is of receiving them from me, and the day that I don't have to will be a red letter day for the entire organisation. I mean, I do have concerns that the report is good, we're making progress, and I know we're supposed to be looking forward, but for me, we have to look back to make sure that the way we're moving forward is correct. And it is a concern to me that, you know, only one was completed by August, and 4 or 5, whatever the number was, by December. And I get that you're progressing along the way, but I just want to reiterate that when an external auditor comes in and makes the comments that they did around this, in the future I would hope that the ELT and the councillors would go, this is a priority for this organisation, that if we have to divert resources, then this is something that we would divert to, because this is about the spending of public money and the transparency of the spending of public money. And I think that's crucial for all of us, staff and councillors. So I still have a couple of concerns that won't surprise any of you. When does staff anticipate that testing of these systems will begin? It's one thing to have gone, this is what we've put in place, and now we're putting that as a completed task. For me, that is not a completed task until we've tested that system change that we've made is now working. So that's the first question.
I'm going to take this one. Thank you, Tracy. So I'll be honest, I actually quite enjoyed going through this process to actually understand how the system works, to get an appreciation of our ERP and how things are working here. Obviously, I've been here quite a short time, so this is a new ERP system for me to get my head around. And part of the process, which is why I've concentrated on the CE, the elected members, the board members and the mayor in particular, is because you're quite a small area, so I can get a feel for how things work and then the improvements that we need to make.
Yep.
There are a number of other initiatives that will be in the BAU space, which will be tidying up cost centres and coding and things like that, and to make it really clear to people what is the right code, what is the process and how we do this. We've got a programme of work working with the learning and development team as well that will be rolled out, that once all of these things, because they will be done concurrently, will be rolled out, there will be clarity, there will be a lot more controls around, and yes, one of your concerns was that everything will come through me, only because at the moment I want to make sure that things like staff recognition and spend around Prezi cards are also controlled, and appropriate measures are taken to explain why, what is the purpose, what is it for, do we really need this, so that we can actually put some decent controls in place going forward. So part of this was a learning thing for me to then obviously improve the policies as we go to give you that assurance that you need.
My concern around everything coming through you was if you get sick. It wasn't about you. It's about whenever we only have one sign off or one something as our process, then what happens if that person leaves, if they get ill, or God forbid, something happens. So that's to clarify from my perspective what that's about.
Yeah. And I think, Tracy, we can allay your concerns there. So within the team, we've got contingencies in place that if Becca's off, then it will go to someone else in the team If they then it off, it goes to someone else in the team. I mean, there's a limit to how far that one can go, to be fair, but there is contingencies in place.
Yeah. And so the training has to filter down, right? So that's part of what I'm talking about, is there's something in there in one of the tracking about training will be available too. Well, we need a plan on who needs to be trained. When are they going to be trained by? What are they going to be trained in? Who's going to do that? Do we need to give resourcing? Is it somebody outside the organisation who's got a particular expertise or whatever, that we give you the resource so that they can have that training? So it's those kinds of those questions. And the policy, I had a similar thing as John when I saw that the policy was sort of for us to read only, and that it's an ELT thing, and I get it on one level and I don't on another, because the more people that contribute to it, that have experience of it or whatever, the better the policy will be, and the better the organisation will operate for it. So I do appreciate that we have got to this point, and that the safeguards that are being put in place in terms of audit and risk, because if you have to report to us more regularly, then that's a double assurance for us that your eyes are over it more regularly. So it's a circular thing. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Tracy. Elizabeth.
I feel silly raising this, but unlike the supermarket where every box comes in, we count how many Cocoa Pop boxes are in it. We're not really that sort of operational business. But obviously you've got some observations here. So if I look at page 33, these are just small examples, but just the overall scale of when we receive goods. For example, you've got milk deliveries and office and stationery supplies. Those on a general day-to-day base will be small amounts, but when it accumulates to over years and years of them providing, is there any way that we are tracking that we're actually receiving what we're paying for? And that's across the whole business end.
Purchase orders are a big thing, and there's a lot of training going into place at the moment to explain the purpose and the need for the purchase orders, and why we should be making sure that whatever you're asking for is actually being received. The onus at the moment is on the business. If they raise that purchase order, it's been approved, that they receipt the invoice and match and make sure everything is correct. I'll admit, the system is quite clunky and quite difficult, and so we do have those ongoing training sessions to show the importance. A purchase order is a legally binding document, so to say we will pay for something, so we are putting a lot of emphasis into the training for the staff to understand that. So yes, at the moment I can put the assurance in that that is happening to ensure that that understanding is there.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you. Samuel.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the what you've presented. Well done, Becca. I was going to bring up Prezi cards. I also wondered if it extends to loyalty programs, frequent flyer miles, flybys, etc. So those are included as well.
I've mentioned it in there that obviously staff cannot benefit from council purchases.
Yeah,
I do acknowledge, Aaron, that you did mention about that, and I need to make that a little bit clearer in the policy, so I apologise for that. I'll change the wording. But no, we've made it really clear that staff cannot benefit from a council purchase to use their own cards. Again, how we monitor that, that's certainly something we need to do, and some of it may tie into the procurement policy as well as what we can and cannot do and how we tie that together.
Thank you. Just for the people online to hear it too. Phone calls and internet, well, I'm under the understanding that elected members, we aren't reimbursed for internet anyway, since we're provided laptop and cell phone. Now, here's the one that sort of grinds my gears. Alcoholic beverages. Our current policy is one alcoholic beverage with a meal, whereas local government guidelines suggest that no alcohol. But yet, $2,734.73 on one occasion, and another occasion of $1,784.85. Now, to my understanding, there's no repercussions for that. There was no reimbursement of those costs. It was quite clear in the report that that was a bit of a no-no. Moving forwards, what would be our course of action? A slap on the wrist with a wet bus ticket, or Go straight to
Alison.
jail, do not collect $200?
So I think it goes to the exception reporting. So whilst we're reporting regularly on actuals, we also need to look at the exceptions to that. So that would come through from Becca to myself, and depending on what that looks like, it would also go to Steve as well. And I'm not necessarily going to say what action would follow, because it almost depends on what the event is itself.
Okay. How about $2,734.73 on alcoholic beverages? Would we have a specific for that?
Let me look at that one and I'll come back to you, Sam.
Okay, cool. And my other question is, how often are we reviewing our sensitive expenditure? Internally auditing it?
I think Sonia talked to that earlier. So it was in the audit programme. We've got the report last year, and ultimately it's an audit and risk decision around what sits in that work programme going forward. Every organisation is going to do things differently, whether or not we wanted to move the programme around to have a more high-level review, but that's a decision for the Audit and Risk Committee to make.
And the question on testing, I'd assume, that is audit and risk, testing it. Do you guys think that it's currently fit for purpose the way it's being done now? I know, personal opinion, sorry, Alison.
I mean, ultimately it's an audit and risk decision what we do. I mean, all I can really talk to is previous organisations where we've done one sort of quite full audit, and generally speaking, every second year you would go back and do a review. But ultimately the decision is down to the committee around whether or not we want to include that into the next programme.
The other thing to add there is that because our monitoring of exception reporting is relatively new, we want to get that in place and see actually what we're going to pick up and see if the behaviours are changing with our new processes, our training, and also our new policy. So once we've got that in place and embedded, then generally from an internal audit perspective, you wouldn't test it for at least 6 months, maybe a year, because you've got to get the evidence behind you to be able to actually perform an internal audit effectively and get the answers you need.
No point auditing if you don't have anything to audit.
Yeah, if everything's still the same as what they did before, we would rather not spend that money on that audit. We'd rather spend it on something that we get more value out of.
Makes sense. Cool. Thank you.
Sam, I just note in the policy on sensitive expenditure here, it says that claiming for alcohol while travelling on official council business is prohibited. And so that wouldn't basically get approved if looking at their approval. So if somebody came to me and I have to approve your sensitive expenditure and it contains that, it wouldn't be approved and therefore it wouldn't be paid.
And that is one of the biggest changes in the new policy is that we've removed that alcohol would be approved. So John Ryan actually in 2020, it was his advice that local government didn't have alcohol as part of its approval process, that was a personal preference for individuals and that they would pay it themselves. So we've taken that guidance from the OAG along with many other things in the policy. So we're trying to be as aligned as we can be there.
Denise.
I just wanted to say that I support John, Tracy and Samuel's comments made and the work that you're doing in audit and risk. I was surprised, and I'm sure our community were surprised, that this wasn't being done, and a rating of 2 out of 5 isn't great, but we are moving forward, so that's great news. Do you think we will have a handle on the GL codes, and is our system up to it, or do you think we need a better system sooner that might actually save us money in the long run?
Like Denise, I think you've heard me say it many times. Our system is a challenge.
I know.
But we have to work with the system that we've got just now. So we're sort of looking at, the stuff that Becca is doing within the financial hygiene project, tidying up the GLs, and it's really what we can do with the system to best mitigate the risks. Would I love a new system? Absolutely, but we don't have one. So we're looking at how we can best use what we've got.
Okay.
Thank you. There being no further questions, I think a few of us will look forward to the reporting coming to Audit and Risk, and yeah, the updates around the audit work program that will sit with Audit and Risk. So, look, I thank you for the work that you're putting in to make a step change in this organisation, and I think it's a good move. So thank you. Councillors, that brings us to the end of our public briefing today. So I thank you for your time and your engagement in the briefing that we have had